it, hit it.
Hello and welcome to the Marley Bird YouTube channel, brought to you by Red Heart Yarns. In this video, I will show you how to make the Love You Knit baby blanket. This is an adorable baby blanket that uses Baby Hugs yarn in the light weight. So that means it's a size 3 Craft Yarn Council weight yarn. This beautiful blanket is done using 4 different colors of yarn, and you switch colors every 12 rows. What's really fantastic about this pattern is the embossed little hearts that are within the various rows. You can see here that by using reverse stockinette stitches surrounded by stockinette stitches, you can get this really great heart effect. In this video, I will talk you through the pattern, give you a couple tips and tricks, and then walk you through how to create the actual heart in the pattern. This is a free pattern available over on redheart.com. I've put a link in the video description box right down there below, and while you're down there, go ahead and smash that like button, as my kids say, to let people know you enjoyed this video. Go ahead, grab yourself a cup of coffee, your pattern, and your needles. Join me back here and I'll get you started on this really great and simple blanket. Before we jump in, let's take a better look at the blanket itself. As we take a look down here at the blanket, I'm looking at the bottom edge, and you can see that this bottom edge is made up of garter stitch. It's specifically 3 inches of garter stitch. When you cast on the 167 stitches for your blanket, you will work in garter stitch until this measures 3 inches. Once you've got the 3 inches, you then are jumping in to the actual body of the blanket. The body of the blanket is done in stockinette stitch with these embossed hearts using reverse stockinette. In order to keep this blanket from rolling because of the stockinette, it is imperative that you keep the garter stitch edge. Once we get past the 3 inches for the bottom border, we will move into the stockinette section, but we will maintain these outside 12 stitches on either side of the blanket in garter stitch. Not only does that prevent our blanket from rolling, but it also makes it really easy for us to count our rows, because for every 1 garter stitch ridge, that equals 2 rows. So in our striped pattern here, we're going to have 12 rows for each pattern section. You can count over here that you will have 6 garter stitch ridges for each color section of your blanket. When you are working these color sections, you will change colors when it's time every 12 rows, and you will change colors when you're looking at a right side row. By doing so, that allows the color bleed of the color change to happen on the reverse side of the blanket. Can you see that? It's really pretty. By doing so, it makes it so that on the public side, the right side of the blanket, we get nice, clean, straight lines. Now, because of the size of the blanket, it's important that you use circular needles. We are not going to be working in the round, but we will use circular needles to be able to hold all of those stitches on your needles comfortably. If you try and push 167 stitches on straight needles, your stitches are going to be so squished on there, and they are not going to come out as uniform as if you use a circular needle. Because I know this blanket is an easy pattern, I'm not going to spend time showing you how to do the long tail cast on or showing you how to do garter stitch. You should know how to do those things for this pattern. If you need a refresher on how to do either one, go ahead and check out my other videos right here on the Marley Bird YouTube channel. For this pattern, you will go ahead and cast on your 167 stitches and work in garter stitch for 3 inches. Now, obviously, my little swatch here, I don't have 3 inches total, but this teal section represents the border that you would be doing. Once you get past your 3 inches for your border, that's when you're going to jump in to your stockinette stitch pattern. I highly recommend working past the first 12 stitches that we will maintain in garter stitch and adding a stitch marker. That stitch marker will allow you to remember that those 12 stitches need to always be knit. Then you will work on through the 143 stitches until you get to the last 12 stitches. add a stitch marker before the last 12 stitches, exactly for the same reason that we added it at the beginning, to remind you that these stitches are always going to be knit. Once you've worked 12 rows of plain stockinette with the garter stitch on the outside, it's time to move into the stripe that actually has the reverse stockinette heart involved. So let's take a look down here, and we're going to use this little swatch here. And what I've done is I have my 12 stitches. I have enough stitches here to get through one of the repeats, and then I have enough stitches to get me to where it's the stitches that you would do past the repeat. Then I obviously have my final 12 stitches. So we're going to work through that. We'll begin here with how to change colors to start this entire row. Once you've completed 12 rows of plain stockinette with the garter stitch on the outside, it's time to switch colors and do the stripe that has the reverse stockinette hearts. So let's go ahead and learn how to change colors at the start of this row. I want to remind you that you will always change colors on a right side row. What you will do is go ahead and cut your working yarn, leaving at least 6 inches of length, so that way you can weave that in later. Grab the color you want to switch to and make sure you leave a tail that's equal to the length of yarn you just cut. Once you've done that, all you will do is grab the other end of your needle here. We're working as if it's a straight needle, okay? So they just happen to be joined with this cable, but we're treating it as if it's a straight needle. Once you've done that, you will go ahead and go into the stitch like you normally would, wrap the new color around your needle, and knit with that new color. See, it's just that simple. That new color then is now on your needle, ready to be knit all the way down. Your tail will be a little bit loose as you're going along, but don't worry. Once you go back and weave in your ends, your tail will tighten all of the stitches up down there and you won't have any problem at all. You'll notice I'm just knitting my 12 stitches here to start. And again, I added that stitch marker after my 12th stitch to remind me that I'm always going to keep these stitches in stockinette. When you get to the stitch marker, you simply slip it off the left needle and move it over to the right needle. It's that easy. In the pattern now, you'll see we're supposed to knit this entire row, and then on the following row, keep those stitches on the outside of our markers in garter stitch, but purl back in the body of the pattern. So I'm going to go ahead, knit down this row, and then purl back. Once you finish row 2, you begin row 3 by knitting those first 12 stitches. Then you'll notice in the pattern there's a bracket. Everything that's within that bracket, you will do the number of times that is written outside of the bracket. That's called your repeat. For this particular pattern, you have a repeat that is done 5 times. So in this bracket, you have a knit 6, purl 1, knit 19, and you will do that a total of 5 times. Let's go ahead and work through one of those. So we will begin by knitting 6. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. The instructions now want you to purl 1. So you bring your yarn between your needles to the front, go in as if to purl, and purl. By doing that one purl bump right there, we are starting the bottom of our heart. We now move our yarn back to the back and we knit 19. Once you've knit 19, you've completed one full repeat and you need to do 4 more for a total of 5. Once you've completed those 5, you'll notice that there are more instructions because we have more stitches. Once you've completed all 5 repeats, you'll then carry on and you will do knit 6, and then purl 1, and then it says knit 18. Now, I do want to remind you, this knit 18 does include those 12 garter stitches on your edge. So don't think that it's 18 before that marker I told you to add. It's 18 including those 12 stitches on the edge. When you get to the end of row 3, it's time to turn your work and begin row 4. Now row 4 isn't as simple as just keeping in basic stockinette because we have to continue to work that reverse stockinette for those hearts. So as we work our repeats in this section, our bumps that we need to be on the right side will now be worked as knit stitches because we're on the wrong side. To make sure that you're putting those bumps in the correct place, you can always take a peek at the right side and make sure that everything is lining up perfectly. Let me show you what I mean. We go ahead and we start off by knitting our 12 stitches just like before because we want to maintain garter stitch on the outside, right? So we just always keep those in knits. When I get to my marker, because I love having that marker for the side stitch, it just makes it so much easier for me. That's when I will take a peek at my pattern and I'll notice that I have instructions in a bracket again. Go ahead and slip my marker and now let's take a peek at the pattern. I now am supposed to purl 5, so I'll move my yarn to the front and I'll purl 5 stitches. So 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. Now it says to knit 3. This is where I was telling you these 3 stitches that we're going to knit are going to represent purl bumps on the opposite side. So we'll knit 3 stitches. So 1, 2, and 3. And then the rest of the instructions say we are to purl 18. So I'll move my yarn back to the front and I'll go ahead and purl 18. Once you have finished purling your 18 stitches, that's the end of your repeat. You can now come over here, go find where you did those knit stitches, and you just kind of pop that over. Those 3 knits are going to look like purl bumps on the opposite side, and they should be centered right above that singular purl bump we did in our repeat on the previous row. Pretty cool, right? That's one way you can quickly check your work. Now you're going to go ahead and repeat that 5 times, and then we have to finish off the row. The instructions outside of the bracket is how we'll finish the row. And for this particular row, we're supposed to purl 5. So 1, 2, 3, purl 4, 5. I will knit 3, 1, 2, 3, and now I will purl 5 and then knit my final ones to keep those in garter stitch. So let's purl 5, slip my marker, and then I knit 12. Once I've completed row 4, I turn my work and I carry on with row 5. Now row 5 will be worked up very similar to the 2 rows we just did in that we will have a repeat. And as we do our stitches, because we're on the right side, those purl bumps we work are going to be on top of the purl bumps we've already created on the previous 2 rows. And eventually, once we get past 12 rows, all of these purl bumps will create a heart. Does that make sense? Hopefully it does. And knowing that you have to do the instructions within those brackets X number of times and then make sure you finish up the row with the instructions outside of the bracket, you should have no problem at all finishing up these 12 rows. Once you finish these 12 rows, that's when your work will begin to look like this. See how all of those purl bumps are all on top of each other in this section, and it creates this heart. And that's done by working those purl bumps when we're on the right side and then working those knit stitches when we're on the wrong side. So as long as you follow the pattern and do the instructions within the bracket the number of times you're supposed to, your pattern will come out like this. This blanket is separated by plain stockinette and then a row with the heart. and then plain stockinette, and then a row with the heart. So as long as you're following the instructions, changing colors when you're supposed to, you'll have a great pattern just like this. When it's time to finish the blanket, you will do so by working a section of garter stitch once again, just like you did when we started. This will measure 3 inches just like the beginning, so that way they match. You'll bind off your stitches and everything will be done except weaving in your ends, which is real simple. Just make sure you tuck in your ends on the wrong side of the fabric, and then your blanket is ready to be given to the mom-to-be at the next baby shower you attend. Hopefully you have enjoyed this video and found it helpful to use stitch markers to read your knitting so that way you know where the purl bumps need to be on the right side of your blanket. And you can now change colors to start a new stripe as you're making your blanket. Run out, get that free pattern, get some Baby Hugs light yarn, and make this beautiful blanket for you or for the mom-to-be in your life. I'm Marley Bird, proud spokesperson for Red Heart Yarn, and this is the Love You Knit Baby Blanket. Thank you so much. Bye. Everything you need to know about knitting or crochet can be found right here on the Marley Bird YouTube channel. Learn with Marley Bird. Visit youtube.com/Marley Bird.